And welcome back to Little Cuts, our weekly mini-sode where we dig into the things that we've been watching recently. I'm Terry, and that was a weird cadence. I apologize.
It gave me time to burp silently, so thank you so much.
Always just thinking about
Thank
you, Mary
you
Beth.
so much.
That's why I did it.
It's all for you. Anyway, I'm Mary Beth, by the way.
Jazz.
I'm Mary Beth, in case you didn't know. This week we are talking A Boy and His Pup. A boy who becomes a pup, which I'm very excited for these two paired things. Mary Beth's hellish analog horror journey, a murder submarine, a surprising backpack trip, and a parody so successful it spawned a subgenre in the early aughts.
Yeah, and didn't age very well, but we'll
get into it.
that.
But first, I want to hear about A Boy and His Pup. I
Oh
love
my
boys and
goodness.
pups.
Okay.
Oh God. Oh, I feel like
okay,
that was
so
the wrong thing for me to say.
Maybe. So this is a movie that just premiered at Beyond Fest, called Good Boy. It is from Norway. It's Norwegian, and it is about Christian, a millionaire heir who meets Sigrid, a young student, on a dating app.
I regret everything I just said already.
They hit it off very quickly. And she comes home to hang out with him that night and realizes that Christian lives with Frank, a human who dresses up and acts like a dog. Actually, acting like a dog isn't exactly what's going on with Frank. He is a dog. I mean, he's a human, but he's not acting. He just is simply, in the words of Christian, he's simply a dog. And
Is it a sex thing?
no. It is, but although she does Google and watches videos about pup play, because she is instantly like turned off by this fact because she has sex with him and falls asleep in his bed, and then when she wakes up in the morning there is a man in a dog suit on the floor panting at her. And then Christian's like, oh yeah, that's Frank. You should treat him like a dog. He feeds him out of a dog bowl. He feeds him doggy treats. Takes him on walks. And you start to like... She's instantly like confused and a little horrified by this turn of events. And so... But she finds out... Yeah, that's Frank. that's Frank. Finds out that, that this guy is a multimillionaire. And... she decides to go on another date with him and talks to him and tries to figure out what is up with Frank. And it kind of goes from there. And I'm not going to say anything else because to say anything else would be to spoil this movie. Needless to say, it gives me, again, without spoiling anything, gives me fresh vibes in terms of like, you never know, not in terms of like cannibalism, but in terms of like, you never know who you're going to meet on these dating apps. And, I can't really say anything else without spoiling it. I enjoyed this film. It kind of is a little predictable in terms of where it's going to ultimately go, and you start to see signs of like, oh, I don't know if I would be doing this. But I enjoyed it, and it's interesting.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So Boy and His Pup.
Okay. Holy shit, that threw me for a loop. I had not even heard of this movie. Oh my God.
Yeah, one of my PR people, Bex, she reached out. She's like, hey, I have this wild movie out of Beyond Fest. Do you want to watch it? I'm like, yeah,
great.
sure.
And you're like, oh my God. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. Just wild. It was wild. Let's talk about this hellish analog journey, though.
Sorry, I don't have more to
I
say.
have no
I
idea.
just like I have so many questions.
I know.
And I know you can't answer them for spoilers. So
And that's the problem. That's the problem. Is that like I was when I read the synopsis, I was like, oh, is this going to be kind of like this weird menage a trois like pup play? It's a thing in the gay community, and I was like, is this? And I guess in the straight community in some ways, but like,
yeah.
I was like, is this going to be that? And it's not. But yeah,
Okay.
it's
All right. Well,
it's weird. I enjoyed it though.
cool.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway,
Analog horror. Now that I've blown your mind.
yes. Huh? So I have the past week been doing like a deep dive into weird YouTube stuff because I have watched a lot of movies. My brain is very tired, and I was like, well, I want to get my horror fix, but I'm going to try and going back to analog horror, which is basically used to describe like YouTube video, like a lot of these YouTube videos that I feel like.
Did you watch the house?
Yeah,
tour?
this is what. Okay, thank you, because I was like, this is what got me doing it, like thinking about this again, because you sent me a video called My House Walkthrough, and it blew my fucking mind. So I fell down another analog horror hole, which is basically like found footage-y movie, like found footage video, like how I describe it, like found footage-esque videos that are on YouTube, but a lot of them aren't just like creepy footage. It's like, think the Mandela catalog, things that have been edited to kind of have this very vintagey feel of like static and these and they feel very 90s, like kind of, but 90s vibes, but also like kind of out of time and place. And they're all pretty scary. And so you sent me My House Walkthrough, which is more like traditional found footage. It's not as analog-y, but it's like such a weird gray area that it isn't. Yeah. But anyway, so My House Walkthrough you sent me, which is basically PT, the short movie. And it's like 12 minutes of a guy walking through his house, but the house is falling apart and it's raining, and every time he gets to the end of a hallway, it repeats. And each time he walks through this hall, like as he walks through the hallways, things change and get weirder. And so that reminded me about like how much I love some of these things on YouTube and how there's so much going on in like digital horror space that I sometimes forget about. And I also edited this incredible article about analog horror at Dread Central, so that I just like fell into a rabbit hole. So I watched My House Walkthrough, then I went to the Tangy virus, which is a series about a virus that is in water and where that virus is coming from. And it's all told through like PSAs on TV, like TV PSAs.
Ooh.
Yeah. TV PSAs, and also like scientists, like journals and records of things that they have experienced. And so what a lot of these videos have kind of why they stand out is a couple things. So one, a lot of them are very much like text-based and voiceover based. They're not like a lot of original film stuff. It's a lot of using like graphics and text and archival footage to create these things on a super low budget, but also creating a lot of reality. Like a lot of these things feel even more real because they're just like thrown onto YouTube. And so, like, I have gone now into this massive hole of watching. I've seen a lot of, like, the big ones, but I started watching all the local 58 TV ones. I found Monument Mythos, which is about Mount Rushmore and all this weird shit going on at Mount Rushmore, which is by Mr. Manticore. I have made a spreadsheet where I am now making a whole, like, list of YouTube analog horror stuff. I'm now on the Reddit subreddit for our analog horror and watching these, like, all of these videos that have 2 views on them, and there's some really good ones. So I have now made this my entire personality, and for the first time in a long time, I'm actually having nightmares from the things I am watching. Yeah.
Oh, shit.
So that's why another reason I wanted to bring this up was because, like, I think, like, I am a person that has nightmares, like, a lot because of trauma. And so I just have nightmares, but movies don't typically trigger them. But watching analog horror recently has, because
Oh, wow.
We all know, I've talked about before my weird like fears of houses that are unknowable, so, like unknowable spaces and
Hmm.
spaces that are uncomfortable and like spaces that feel familiar but aren't familiar are a huge fear of mine that for some reasons
That's kind of why I was like, you have to watch
yes.
this My House
So
walkthrough, because I was like,
and so like I have like and like so like it's like the reason why Skinamarink, which I think is like one of the closest ways like of analog, like between that and World's Fair in terms of having analog horror on like YouTube translating into like feature films, those capture
hmm.
it. And I think it captures this like weird space, like liminal 90s space in my subconsciousness that I can't quite explain, but somehow melts my head and makes me feel like I am like floating. It sounds very crazy. I swear I'm sober talking about this, like, but it just taps into this weird fear, and it's been fascinating to dig into it and see how scary.
What if we, what if we do a Fresh Wounds episode on these YouTube
I mean,
videos?
I'm down. I could talk about this shit forever. I'm like rewatching Marble Hornets because that was one of like the first big ones. So yeah, I'm just like going through a very fascinating analog horror journey on the internet. And there's some weird shit out there, guys, and it's great. So if you have any suggestions for things I should be watching, let me know. Thanks. So yeah,
Please.
that's my journey. Wanted to share that.
That's
Yeah.
wild. Like, I have a lot of thoughts about this too in terms of like the 90s aesthetic, particularly with like also video games have like indie horror games have been going
Yes.
back to like a PSX like aesthetic of really crappy visuals, like purposefully doing so to like rekindle kind of like almost like that nostalgic feel, I guess, of that time period.
Yeah, and I also think that because if like and so I was home wedding planning stuff and was talking to I have a 20-year-old brother, and I was asking him about this because he loves this stuff. And it was really cool to hear his perspective as someone who uses YouTube a lot different than I
Oh,
do.
mm-hmm.
And he thought a lot of these things were real when he first found them. Like he actually
Oh, wow.
because so much of them like feel so like they feel like old TV announcements or like PSAs or commercials, and the way that they're made, if you don't, if you stumble upon them on YouTube and you don't know anything about them, like they do seem real. Like they, and again, like I
Right.
think this is a really, I'm gonna nerd out. It's like a really interesting indication of how like the found footage idea, like DIY filmmaking, is shifting in the digital age. Because I talk about this a lot and how like technology and the internet have let found footage become something so unique that I don't think any other subgenre or like filmmaking technique of horror has. And I think it's leading to some really really cool creative stuff that just not as many people are seeing, or like people that are in maybe in the horror filmmaking industry aren't respecting as much because they think of horror filmmaking as one thing. But horror filmmaking, I think, is shifting so much in terms of what that means and what people are creating. And I think it's just so fucking cool to see what people are making. Like the house walkthrough has a whole making of video that was really fucking cool. And like, the Mandela catalog in the back rooms, people, they're like 18-year-old kids just like fucking around in Premiere. Like it's so interesting. So yeah, I could.
That's why I think an episode of this would be kind of
I
interesting.
mean, I have a spreadsheet. I have things labeled. It's like yeah. So yeah, we could talk more about that because I could talk about this for hours.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, okay, so we talked about boy and his pup, and then analog horror. But then what about a boy who turns into a pup? Is this one a sex thing? Okay, cool.
No.
Look,
I
you said
wish. Oh
pup,
my
and I'm
god.
like,
This
is it?
is
I'm like, am I being a weirdo for thinking about pup play? But no, like, just
No, this is a Werewolf by Night.
oh, ha ha ha. Very clever. Anyway, cool. Tell me.
It came to me as I was watching these
Fuck
two
yeah.
movies. I was like, I watched a movie with a pup and a
That's
guy
an
who becomes a pup.
incredible
So
double feature. That really is.
I had to. Yeah, so Werewolf by Night is Marvel's little Halloween special that's on Disney Plus, and it sort of apes the I would say Universal monster feel from the 1930s. Like it's all shot in black and white. It has like, I mean, a werewolf in it, sort of like the Wolfman type thing. the main character is played by Gail Garcia Bernal, who
He's so pretty.
is hot. He's hot.
That's all
I
I
love
have to
him.
say on that.
And like I mean, I kind of wish that they had just really gone old school horror instead of it being superhero-y, because I do think the superhero element of it kind of takes me
Okay.
out of it, because it's about this family of like monster killers, and they're sort of like they come together because this man, a Bloodstone. I The lore kind of went over my head, but
It
like
was a comic, right?
he
It was a
dies.
comic book, right? Like Werewolf by Night is a comic.
I
Okay,
think so.
guys. I don't know jack shit at this point about anything Marvel,
I don't
and I won't
either.
even try to pretend like I understand.
No, me neither. But guy dies, has this bloodstone. I think his last name was Bloodstone,
Ha!
and everyone
Shocking.
is trying to. I know, right? And everyone is trying to like become the next person in charge of this monster hunting organization, and so they've unleashed a monster in a closed-in area, and everyone has to. The person that kills it and takes the bloodstone from it gets the bloodstone. I don't really know. All I
Oh.
know is that like it has Gale turning into a werewolf. It has Man Thing, who is the adorable like I am Groot meets Swamp Thing
Okay. Wow,
in
there's
a
someone
way.
called the Flaming Tuba in this show.
Oh my god, there is a flaming tuba in this. He is literally like walking on like a they're doing like a march, and it is literally a guy playing a tuba that is on fire, and it's amazing.
Okay.
Man Thing makes Gale a French press coffee at some point in this movie or this episode. It's just it was adorable. It was delightful. I do think that the direction by composer Michael Gianchio. He's a
Yeah.
composer. This is his
I'm not
directorial
even
debut.
gonna try to I can't. I've heard it said before, but I'm.
I do think it feels very TV in terms of like their discussions. It's very much like a camera close up on person's face, camera close up on the next person's face,
Okay.
back and forth. Like it's very workmanlike in the
Okay.
direction and cinematography. But there's a lot of really cool interplay with 1930s horror that was really drawing me in. So it's on Disney Plus. It's less than an hour. I kind of wish a little bit meatier, but it was fun.
Okay. All right.
And I like seeing Marvel do horror.
I've heard.
I want more.
I've heard people saying like, okay, this is like the best they've done in terms of hitting horror stuff, and I like Gabriel Galgar or Jesus Christ. How do I say his? Why did I just like forget how to say his name?
Gael Garcia Bernal.
Garcia Bernal. Gael Garcia Bernal. I really like him and everything. And I feel like if you're an actor with anything, you're in a fucking Marvel thing at this point. So
Yeah. I've loved him since E2
Oh.
Mama Tambien. The movie's so
okay.
good.
Well, I didn't realize it was only 52 minutes, so maybe I will check it out.
Yeah, it's very short.
Okay. Cool.
It's fun. I got to hear about this murder submarine because, like, I saw you tweeting about it, and I was like, a murder submarine?
Okay.
What?
So this is the new Netflix documentary called Into the Deep, which is all about it's all about the guy Peter Madsen who murdered a journalist, Kim Wall, in his homemade submarine. You guys probably heard about, like, this was like dominated the news for I think in 2017. It was like this journalist went missing and she was on the submarine with this guy and they couldn't find her, but they found him, and he had like the submarine was sinking, and they found him, but she wasn't there, and he was like, "Oh, I dropped her off." And they're like, "Well, we haven't heard from her." And then they found her body. Like, they found that they didn't find her body. They found her torso, like, specifically. They found, like, literally just her torso in the water. And then he's like, oh yeah, she died on board and I had to cut her up to put her in the water. And then they found out that this guy was actually like premeditated, he tortured, raped, murdered, and dismembered this woman on the sub. And so
Oh God.
it's so incredibly fucked up. But so this documentary is really interesting because the filmmaker Emma Sullivan, who's Australian, was already making a documentary about Peter Madsen, like when this was happening, because he is an inventor. He's Danish. Hold on, let me just make sure, because I think Kim Wall is Swedish and he's Danish, and I get all of that shit mixed up. Yeah, so he's a Danish inventor who basically wanted to make his like a homemade submarine, basically, like with it, like, and not have like a government agency make it, which I didn't really think you could do. Like, I don't really know what I thought it was, like how a submarine creation worked, but I just was like, no, you couldn't just like do that in your backyard. Well, this guy is really smart. He's like a self-taught engineer. His whole goal was to get his own crew into space. Like, he wanted to prove you could build a rocket. And the submarine was like somehow the first step. And what people realized was why he wanted to make the submarine was because he wanted to murder. But no one knew that. So they're making this so the documentary that Emma starts making is like interviewing him about like making the submarine and the process of that and all of the interns and volunteers that like he has kind of acquired in this journey. And so the footage is flipping back and forth between like them recording before the murder and then after. And the whole thing is about Emma and all of these people who knew Peter like realizing that this guy's a fucking sociopath. And it's all about, it's really interesting because it's all like their realization. Like, one of these women who I believe was in a relationship with him realizes that she was on like one of the women he wanted to kill, like he could have killed, because he was like, hey, I want you to come on the submarine with me alone, and like said these weird things about like she was like, he said these things about like stabbing her and like all this crazy shit over text, and she like slowly realized, oh my god, like he wanted to kill me, and like this is evidence for the police. And so he basically made a murder submarine to torture women and kill women and dispose of them. And this documentary is just like about unpacking that and about people like realizing like, oh my god, this guy was horrendous and self-serving and evil. And it's a lot. It's a lot. Yeah, it's really, it's one of those things that I think is interesting because it's like, it's an interesting take on the true crime, and it does focus on the people who were like involved and knew him and like had their perceptions of reality basically like entirely changed, and it's really dark. But the other interesting thing too is that Emma Sullivan, when she started making this documentary, she got permission from people to film for a different documentary. So this came out in 2020 at Sundance, and they had to re-edit a ton of it because people were like, I didn't agree to be in a documentary about this. Like, I agreed to be in a documentary about Peter as an inventor, not Peter as a murderer.
Oh, shit.
So before it came out on Netflix, it went through a bunch of edits, like removing people out of it who were like, I didn't consent to be in this. And then one of the main like interview subjects, this woman, her face is digitally like recreated. Like, it's not, because it's like, it's weird. It's not blurring her face.
Oh, I heard about them doing that. I didn't know what it was for, though.
Because she didn't want, she's scared of this guy. Like, this guy's in prison, but like she's scared as shit of him. So she had her face digitally altered so people couldn't see who she was, like actually was. And it was really, yeah, it's fucked. It's one of them. I think it's really well done. It's also one of the more fucked up true crime documentaries I've seen.
Yeah, I don't know what to say about that.
We're really doing that to each other today. Just like, oh my god.
But briefly, just very briefly, speaking about true crime, the news today that the prosecution has decided to like not pursue Adnan anymore.
Yeah.
For Serial.
I haven't done a lot of reading into that, but that was where I mean, Baltimore. That's like 40 minutes from where I live. So that's really interesting.
Wild.
Yeah, that's a very interesting situation. And fucked up for a lot of reasons. and how much they fucked up in terms of like, oh yeah, there was another suspect we didn't pursue.
No, there are two suspects, I believe.
Either of them. Sick.
Wild.
Anyway, I know that this is a movie I think we both saw, A Surprising Backpack Trip.
I can't even explain why this movie made me scream in joy, because it is a huge spoiler. But just know that I texted Mary Beth when a specific moment came up and said, I did not know Significant Other was blah. If that does make you want to go watch the movie, I don't know what will. But Significant Other is the movie that we have both seen about a young couple played by Micah Monroe and Jake Lacey, who are dating. They've been dating for a long time. He takes her. She loves to surf. He likes to take hikes. They go on this hike into this forest where, unbeknownst to them, the night before, some kind of red comet has fallen out of the sky, and there's something out there with them. And it goes from there. And I feel like that's about all I can really say.
Yeah, so this is directed by Robert Olson and Dan Burke, who also did Villains that also starred Micah Monroe and Bill Skarsgård, right. And that was kind of like a take on the home invasion movie. Mm-hmm. And so this is their take on like the kind of couple in peril movie. And like, again, this is a movie you want to go in not knowing anything about, because there's a really fun, like it takes a lot of fun turns that you wouldn't expect. And I think the marketing is very misleading on purpose. Not like what I talked about with Smile, where I was like, irresponsible. But this one has much more like purpose in it, and it's much more fun than I expected. It's a little bit predictable, but like it's still really fun. Jake Lacey especially is hamming it up quite a bit in this movie, which is really fun. And it's just like,
I'll say that it is predictable, but I also was not expecting two things that happen.
Yeah, it's like, it's weird. It's like, the parts of it are predictable, but parts of it aren't. So I think they play with the idea of predictability in a really interesting way. Mm-hmm. Which I was really surprised with how much I liked this. Because I think, like, you know, perfectly understandable jaded horror journalist sees a trailer for something like that. And I'm like, I mean, I love Micah Monroe and I really like Jake Lacey, but like, I don't know about this, but just watch it on Paramount Plus. They're so really good together. I was lucky enough to interview the two of them, and they're incredible. And she's like the coolest. I just want to get a beer with Micah Monroe so bad. She seems really man, cool. I don't know. I was in It Follows, and I kind of that wave just kind of happened and took me through horror. And I was like, hell yeah. She's like, yeah, I don't know. I like horror movies, but I didn't mean for this to happen. I was like, sick. So yeah, I was really surprised. It's a good like Halloween watch too, for sure. If you have Paramount Plus, you should. Paramount Plus is stepping their shit up. I'm gonna say, like, they've got some good shit. So good for them.
They do. Yeah, this one really surprised me.
Yeah,
really surprised me, and I really want to say why.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
I'm not going to. But DM me if you've watched this movie so we can like Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about a scary movie, Mary Beth.
Let's talk about scary movie.
This movie, what I think is so funny about this movie is that it literally takes the script from Scream, pretty much sometimes down to the wording, the actual dialogue, and then is like, what if we take out this word and we play ad-libs or Mad Libs and just sort of like insert something else, so that instead of like, what's your favorite scary movie? Kazam! Have you seen Shaq's acting? Like, it's like literally Mad Libs.
Fart
just
noise.
Like
And
take
some
the
fart
dialogue
noises.
and some fart noises. take out a keyword or two and find the most ridiculous thing you can insert in there. That's what she said. And you will get Scream. Or Scary Movie. Fuck. Wow, that was shade towards Scream, huh?
Freudian slip. Yeah, so I could not remember if I had seen this one and Scary Movie 2, because I remember Scary Movie 2 a lot better, because that's the hand man, right? Mashed potatoes, hand man. The reason I remember that I had seen this, and I saw this, I think I was barely 10, if not 10, if not, like, I was either 10 or younger. No, Terry, I didn't remember this movie because I understood literally none of it, because I had not seen any of the movies it was referencing. The one reason that I remembered why I had seen it was when Billy comes and squirts her into the ceiling. Because I was like, oh my god, because I remember I unlocked a memory because it was when my dad was still, okay, I was definitely under 10 because my dad wasn't married to his second wife, but they lived together and they got married on my 10th birthday, and I will hold on to that forever, but that's not for right now.
Oh my god!
Anyway. It's a fun little nugget to throw in there.
Putting a little pin in that for later.
I was like, what happened to her? Like, why? What's the white stuff? Why is she stuck on the ceiling? And they did not know what to do.
No,
and I was like, well, what did you think was going to happen showing a 9-year-old scary movie? I remember this. Like, I didn't know what was going on. Because we watched a bunch of them. Because we watched, like, 1, 2, and then I think is 3 the Charlie Sheen. What's the one where they make fun of Charlie Sheen with a boner? Is that 2 or 3?
I guess it would be 3. That's the Signs.
That's the Signs
Aliens.
World of the Worldy one.
World's World.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Anyway, we were like, I think my dad was like showing me all those movies at an age of which everything just went so far over my head.
What? Why?
You're gonna have to ask him. But yeah, so that was I just wanted to share that fun memory with the class, because I was like, wow, okay, I have seen this. I just didn't remember it because I understood none of the jokes. Now I do. Just so everyone knows. I understand what was happening now, in case anyone was worried.
So, wow, I can't top that story about my first time seeing this movie, but I will say, I'm going to say this. How sad is it that I watched this movie so much as a young man, because this was like the only gay representation I had? Like, how bad is that? How sad is that?
That's about on par with mine, I think. That's pretty fucked up. Oh my god, are you serious? I literally wanted to come and be like, this is such a homophobic movie. It
is, and it's also like I don't even know how to unpack the Miss Man situation. I don't even know what to do with that. But this movie had like penises, a lot of hunky shirtless men. Like, what's his name? I cannot remember what his name is. Is it Lachlan? Something Lachlan?
Oh, the blonde guy. His name is Lachlan.
Mm-hmm.
It's the douche. Lachlan sounds. It's douchey.
Why can't I think of what the actor's name is? But he's in it, and I was like so attracted to that man when I was younger. It's just like, yeah, this was the gay content that I was given.
Like a lot of it is about like because they're playing a lot with like the sexual tension between Stu and Billy in the original one, which I was like, oh, interesting. But then they just like make it all about like weird claws. Like, it's just very much like, oh, dude, I sucked your dick, and it's like, no, I'm not gay, like that kind of stuff. And it was like, oh god, all of this, every bit of it aged poorly. Like, Dewey's character is a terrible. Bad. He is realized as someone with a learning disability, and they use the R slur quite a bit about him because this was 2000, so great. Yeah, transphobia, homophobia,
And
fat phobia. I mean, we knew this going in. It was going to be like this, but it is wild to see what humor was like in 2000. Like, the number of fart jokes that going on here, absolutely, and like diarrhea, poop jokes. I mean, like, it's got everything a young boy loves.
mm-hmm.
And people loved it. It spawned a bunch more, and it spawned a whole genre of the horror, like you said in the intro, like a bunch of parodies of movies.
Date movie, epic movie, disaster movie, vampires suck, like superhero movie, I believe was one. Like, and the ones I just listed were just ones by the people that were associated with this as writers. Because like what happened was, I believe Dimension / Miramax bought 2 scripts that were very similar to each other and kind of smushed them together and gave them to the Wayans. So
okay.
like, part of this was like a script that I believe Jason Friedberg and Aaron Seltzer were doing, and then the other part was a Wayans Brothers script, and I believe that they kind of smushed them together, and that's how we've gotten this. Because I believe at one point this movie was actually called, where was this? Sorry, 1 second. We're vamping.
What? There are so many. Meet the Spartans? Jesus Christ.
Oh, I know. There's
so
just
many of them. And they're all so bad. But they make so much money. People love this shit. It's wild.
Yeah. Scream, If You Still Know What I Did Last Halloween was one of the titles of this film originally.
Yeah, Scary Movie's better.
Well, Scary Movies is a great title because that's what Scream was originally called.
Oh, that's right.
Scary Movie. So, like...
Oh, that is funny.
It's funny.
Okay. Also, Anna Faris. Look, this movie's not great, but let's talk about Anna Faris, because I think this was my first introduction to Anna Faris, and I think
Mine
this was
too.
like her big moment when she got like super like recognizable. And Regina Hall is also in this too, like, who is
that's the thing.
It's like really interesting to see the people who are in it and like where they are now, which is always a thing, but especially with Scary Movie, especially Regina Hall, who like was in Master earlier this year and like has been in some other horror movies, and her career has evolved so interestingly, like with comedy as well. And it's just very funny to see her start as this kind of like parody of a Black woman, and the whole the whole scene of her talking loudly in the movie theater is like making fun of the way people think about like loud Black women in movie theaters. And now it's interesting to see that she's in much more nuanced roles. So that alone was very fascinating.
Those are the only 2 reasons to watch this movie, is their chemistry together, their comedic timing. Anna Faris is she's fucking funny in this.
So funny. Like, yeah, I get it. A lot of her gags are like fucked up, but like Anna Faris is just so funny. Like, her comedic timing, her reaction, her ability to play someone who's like kind of spacey is so good.
Her willingness to look stupid. To willingness to not be the kind of cute woman that like a lot of times movies will pigeonhole. She's willing to go for that gag regardless of how ridiculous it is. And I love that about her. And I have loved her ever since I saw this movie. And I think that part of like my nostalgia for this movie is probably because of her and Regina Hall, because I think they are just both so hilarious in these roles, and their willingness, both of them, to really just kind of go for that gag. I agree
with that 100%. Like, there's a part where they make fun of The Matrix, and it's Anna Faris and parody Ghostface running around, and there's a part where she Irish dances in the air, and it's like it's just so like basic, but it just made me laugh. I don't know. I was just like,
it's so dumb, but it's funny. I love
it's so funny. Like, and that's like, some of the jokes here are kind of funny because they don't rely on like making fun of a minority group or like someone different. There is some funny stuff in here. Like the Blair Witch parody part did kind of crack me up. I was like, okay, that is pretty funny to me. Like, I mean, everyone's made fun of it, but still, like, I thought that was pretty funny.
Well, and what I love that this movie does that a lot of these the kind of follow-ons, the date movies, epic movies, yada yada yada, don't do, is this nails the look of that '90s dimension horror film. Like the way this movie looks like we are watching Scream or we are watching I Know What You Did
Yeah.
Last Summer. It mimics that sort of the vibe, the kind of crisp modern aesthetics, the kind of way the camera looks. That it nails that vibe so much that if it weren't for the fact that it's Mad Libs, you could be watching another really bad entry in one of those films. And I don't know.
Yep.
There's something about that I really like. It's just a lot of this has not aged incredibly.
No.
And probably, to be honest, was not appropriate back
Yeah,
then.
like
either.
there's no
But,
way
like,
any of that was appropriate then, but like, it felt more in line, like in vogue with the comedy. Because, like, like that was like when Shallow Hal and like all of those fucking movies.
Oh, yeah.
I hate how much I loved that movie as a child. I will not rewatch it because I don't want to even be confronted with the like. I know how bad it is. So just anyway,
Yeah.
we've come a long way in a very short amount of time in terms of comedy, everybody, or at least mainstream
have.
comedy. So good
Yes.
for us, I guess.
But speaking about how far we've come, what are we going to watch next week, Mary Beth? Because I'm really excited
We're
for this
watching Slither, which is James Gunn movie, and it's disgusting and funny and one of Steve's favorite movies. So I'm very excited to.
It's one of my
It's
favorite
fucking
movies.
gross.
It's so gross.
That's why I bought a T-shirt from it. I can't wait to wear it in the next recording because it's disgusting.
Hell
But yeah, we're talking Slither. I'm very excited because the movie we talked about earlier in the series is like a direct lead into Slither, which is one of the reasons why we were excited to talk about it. So, and then who are we talking to on Monday?
Ooh, we were chatting with Vanessa and Joseph Winter, the filmmakers behind Deadstream, and a segment in the upcoming VHS 99, and they brought with them the iconic Don't Look Now. And we are going to be recording with them in about 14 minutes.
So it's going to be great. We're pretty sure. But we're talking about found footage and also Donald Sutherland and Julie Christie being hot as shit. So, like, I don't know. How could it be not fun?
Sounds like a good time to me.
Get ready for that one because I'm very excited to talk Don't Look Now.
Me too.
Anyway, listeners, you've heard from us. We want to hear from you. Have you watched any of the things that we watched this week and have thoughts? Do you have analog horror recommendations for me and Terry? I'm making Terry fall into this hole with me now. Ha ha. If you want to look at my spreadsheet, my growing spreadsheet of movies, I can DM it to you because, like, that's what I'm spending my time on now. I'm not planning a wedding and have a full-time job. Of course, I'm going to start another, like, research project. Why not? Anyway, send us an email at scarredforlifepodcast@gmail.com, or you can reach out to us directly on Twitter. I am at MB McAndrews.
And I'm McGailey
And,
Dreadful.
of course, don't forget to follow the podcast on Twitter at Scarred Podcast.
And please don't forget to review, rate, and subscribe. And join us on Patreon, where you could be watching this right now.
Thank you to Eric Power for our artwork. Thank you to Sean Keller for our music. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Please stay safe out there, but most importantly, stay creepy.
And until next time.